Hello and welcome to Chapter Select at the Movies with your hosts Jens and Randy. Hey Randy,
Hello. How's it going?
going all right. It's the end of the week. We're recording an episode on The Last
Yes.
of Us just as the next episode of The Last of Us is about to, sneak up on us from behind.
Yes. If you are watching this the date it came out, we're getting a new episode tonight because they want to avoid the Super Bowl. If you're not watching it today, then the episode's already out. And if you're watching us from 5 years from now because you caught a different episode and you're just going back and watching, then how's The Last of Us Part 4, basically?
Yeah, if this is timeless content, that people are going to be showing their grandkids.
Right.
Where were you when Randy and Jens podcasted? Um, this episode, it was all right. It was an
Yeah.
all right
I
episode.
mean, this is the first one that, but at the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, this has been fantastic. However, I think this is the first episode that had major sections where you could not get the smile off my face.
Interesting. Just because of
But in the end,
the Ellie and Joel moments, there were a lot of good
yeah,
ones.
yeah, they had some fantastic moments. The whole dad joke book
Hmm.
being a part of this episode, as it was been a part of the first game and the DLC of the game, was great. The entire car ride section that they straight pulled from the game, which they absolutely nailed, has been,
Hmm.
that whole section was fantastic. Just the bits and pieces between the two characters were great. Um, I'm not greatly sold yet on the new character in Kansas City, and that's the other big change, is we're in Kansas
Hmm.
City, not Pittsburgh. But I get the differences. They're trying to combine some stuff. It's crazy. We only have 5 episodes after this, so there's a lot to jam pack in, and they were trying to do that. And I do give them credit, just to jump into it real quick, and we can go back. But I
Hmm.
do give them credit for attempting to give the group in the city more of a purpose than there was in the original game, because in the game they were just assholes. Here they're assholes with a purpose or a reason to be assholes.
We don't even.
However,
Hmm.
however, I'm not sold on it yet. We'll see how this next episode fleshes it out more.
I'm quite concerned, and that's because the way that they've changed those characters, it almost feels like story beats from The Last of Us Part Two. In the way that they have that segment, and I realize I'm jumping ahead here.
Mm-hmm.
But when Joel and Ellie have to kill to defend themselves, essentially, and then a little while later, this other group of people who are on the hunt for somebody who's wronged them, they're on a revenge quest, which also made me think of part two. I guess, like, oh, you're introducing these themes earlier. You're writing backwards from part two a little bit with how you're setting these things up for television, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that story beat of Joel and Ellie have to kill those two guys or however many there are, and then when the other caravan of people finds them, they get really mad and start, well, they're looking for somebody else. They think somebody else did it, but they start, combing the town. It felt very much like, oh yeah, this is kind of like what happens in part two, a bunch. So I don't know. It's interesting that they're bringing some of that stuff forward. At least that's how it feels to me.
Well, I think, I mean, yes, they did a lot of that in part two, but that's just kind of how people would react. And yes, they go ham with it in part two at times to try to make you
Hmm.
feel for the characters that you're killing, because a lot of that is the reason for part two. And they do that
But I
here
mean
in the show
specifically
as
the thing
well,
of
where they.
like you get into what's framed as like a typical encounter where you just have to kill to live, basically. And then of course the next story beat is somebody finds those bodies and they were important people that meant something, and now
Mhm.
they're
Oh
mad,
no,
mad, mad.
Steve! Oh, you killed Steve! I
Exactly.
mean,
How could you kill
straight name
Steve?
dropping stuff.
Now I will spend the whole game on the revenge quest to avenge Steve. So
Hey, you know what? Again, dating when this episode comes out, the Fast 10 trailer just came out.
hmm
That's everything. All the movies are about revenge from previous deaths.
no, they're about family. No, I haven't actually
Well,
seen. I haven't seen the
the
trailer yet.
bad guys are all about revenge from
Okay.
previous movies.
Okay.
If
So
you have
like
not
like
seen that, if you have
like
not seen that
Hans
trailer yet,
like
it
Hans
is.
Gruber's brother in Die Hard 3
Yeah,
kind of thing.
basically.
Okay, sure.
But that's only 2 movies apart. This is like 5.
For bad guys, it's a little bit more. I'm just. I don't want to give anything away of where the story is going, but
Mhm,
it definitely feels like, oh yeah, you're hitting these beats sooner to me anyway. But
mhm.
but speaking of story beats, we should probably go through it a little bit more linearly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, yeah, so we've got a bunch of business about Joel and Ellie in the beginning bonding. You know, they're looting some places.
Mhm,
He teaches her how to siphon gasoline from a car
mhm.
and tries to explain it. And she's like, "You don't know how it works." Um,
Right. I do like that. It's like you're not educated. It's like, hey, I just know it works.
he's
That's
kind of
it.
like his. It's like a half explanation. He's like kind of sort of there, but not in a way that I guess you could follow necessarily. And then you know we get all this business around her, the gun that she took in the last episode, right, where she saves him. They run into some raiders. He's in the midst of being strangulated. She shoots the guy, but not fatally, and then he has to finish him while she leaves the room, which does confirm. You know, I think a couple of episodes ago we talked about this, where it's like, okay, the first time that they're gonna have to actually kill a human being together, they're gonna
Mhm,
make a big thing out of it dramatically, and that is exactly what happens.
mhm.
You know,
Can you
she's on the other side of the wall, you know, holding back tears. Joel is stabbing the dude who's pleading for his life to finish him off. Sorry, Randy.
will you do me a favor, Jens? Because I don't know if I'm cutting out for you, but you're cutting out for me really bad. Can
Oh, I'm sorry.
you want to leave and come back real quick? And
Okay.
I might have to edit it, but okay. The good thing is with this is we both have our own recording, so when you put it together, go. But I'm missing half of the stuff you're saying. So, but yeah, as far as what I was able to comprehend from yours is, yeah, they do a big deal of Ellie's first kill, and I thought that was done well. I mean, it's obviously done different in the game where she actually finishes off the kill, but I do like this aspect because you do see Joel have that moment of, okay, you need to go because I have to do something not very fun. So please go out. And then,
Hmm.
like you said, Ellie does have that moment behind the wall where she's holding back tears, but she bounces back pretty quick
She
and
does,
kind
yeah.
of sucks it up. And she has mentioned that that's not her first kill, and I'm sure we will
Hmm.
see that in
We'll get to
the
that.
flashback and that we'll have in a couple episodes or whatever. But just that was a really well done section, and this is where even in the game where you start seeing the connection between Joel and Ellie start to really form a bit more of Joel really trying to protect Ellie from the evils that have taken over the world.
Hmm.
And like he's like, you're a kid, you shouldn't have to deal with this, yet you are, and that's just kind of part of it. And getting that trust between the two is starting to form here, and that again, that's why I really like this episode.
Yeah, it's touching the way that, you know, Joel kind of tries to shield Ellie from these things, but then when she tells him, "Oh, I've actually, you know, had to defend myself before," that's when he's like, "Oh, okay, you've done this." And she's excited because she, you know, now she gets to have the gun with his permission.
Mm-hmm.
She's proved her usefulness. She's proved that you know, she can handle it,
Well,
and she's
though
defending
while
him.
she has permission to have the gun, it's supposed to be in the backpack, and yet she still is
Hmm.
defiant. She's like, nah, I'll have it in my coat pocket.
Right? Yeah, she's gonna do what she's gonna do. So,
So before that, I want to go back to the more goofy parts of the
hmm
beginning part of the episode, where we were talking about the siphoning of the gas, and that's where we get the joke book,
hmm
and they straight take a lot of the jokes from the games and use them here, and then of course the car ride where she had taken one of the old porno mags from Bill's house and it makes the good jokes of it. What did you think of those two sections, bringing a little bit of light and a little bit of humor, and again, kind of molding that Joel and Ellie relationship?
oh, I completely agree with you that it was very well done. Obviously, taking things directly from the games, in this case, worked really, really well. And we're getting those bonding dynamics between Joel and Ellie that we're going to need for this story to be effective. And yeah, it's building them up really well as kind of a substitute father daughter couple.
Hmm.
So liking it for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm not one that, is like, oh, it has to go beat by beat and has to do exactly like the games. As long as, the characters are the same and the same main story bits are put,
Hmm.
like the adaptation part is totally fine with me. But just having those moments where it's like, oh man, yep, they pulled this exactly. And there's going to be a couple more scenes I think that they will pull exactly from the game, some of the major aspects. I know a lot of people are all upset because he doesn't say an exact line when they go try to run by the guy
Oh,
before
what
trying
what
to
is
get
that?
around the ambush. It
What's that
was
about?
well because I mean, people get all upset because they
Hmm.
remember iconic moments from the games, and if you go
Sure.
back and play the game, when they meet the guy in the road and they're like, "Are we going to help him?" But in the
Hmm.
game, Joel says he's not even hurt and hits the gas. And
Hmm.
in the show, I'm pretty sure he just goes, "No, we're not helping him," and hits
Yeah.
the gas. Stuff like that, I don't care. You don't have to nail it perfect, but it's like
Well,
this was
this
one of
is
those scenes where it was like, all right, like
that's
the,
like in
the
episode
conversation about
one.
the yeah,
In
go ahead.
episode one, when the soldier doesn't say explicitly,
Yeah,
"You want me to kill her, sir?"
hmm,
You don't. It's a TV show.
yeah,
You don't have to necessarily explicitly state these things. It's dramatically more effective
hmm,
for us not to know whether or not Joel knew whether that guy was really injured or not until later in the episode.
yeah, and they hit it, and I still like the line better in the game than I do
Do
in
you?
the show. Yeah,
I mean, it
it's
makes
just
it more unambiguous. It feels like it's the sort of thing, a line that has to be there if you want your audience to like, okay, you need to know, maybe because you're in control as the gamer, you need to know that
mhm.
like Joel's not a bad person and he's doing this for the right reason,
Oh, Joel's
or
absolutely a bad person.
Joel knows what's up. Like you need to know that Joel knows what's up. But
Hmm.
in a passive medium where we're watching a story unfold, maybe it's better to be left in the dark about that until 10,
Well,
20
they
minutes
don't
later when Joel
really
and Ellie have that conversation.
they don't leave you in the dark, and I think it gets to the same situation because I think that the same question gets asked: How did you know that guy didn't need our help? Or in the game, how did you know that guy really wasn't
Because
hurt?
I've been on the other
It
side of
yeah,
things.
yeah, it gets to the same spot. And I thought that conversation in the stairwell was fantastic, and it's that same sort of Joel going, "You really don't want to know the full answer, but I will respect you enough to go, yeah, I've done some shit."
This
And
it'll be interesting. Keep track of when people are upset about lines from the game not being represented, because so far the two examples that you've cited were both kind of
oh
expository
yeah, and that's why I
lines.
don't have issues with it. I know a lot of people were upset because episode 3 is completely different, and they expand on Bill's story, and that's it was built differently, or they just don't like gay people, and that's a whole
Yeah,
thing.
that's
Holy cow, have I seen some reactions to episode 3 that just absolutely make your head hurt. But
yeah. I try to avoid the Discord, but it was
oh,
difficult
I
with
have
that
fun
one.
with it.
It
Yeah.
was
Oh,
really hard because it bled into everything.
oh, I've not to give this other guy any love by any means, but I watched a reaction to somebody watching Ben Shapiro's reaction to episode 3, and it's hilarious.
Why is
It's
Ben
all I'm gonna say
Shapiro reacting to The Last of
because it
Us?
has gay people in it,
Okay,
and he doesn't like the gay people, and
sure.
just again, the best part about watching that video was the reactor would pause Ben
Hmm.
Shapiro's video and make a joke and go, he's probably going to say something stupid like this. And it's going to be so dumb and it makes no sense. And then 5 seconds later,
He
Ben
does it.
Shapiro was saying exactly that in the most serious tone. It's just
Mm, yeah, he's a bit
some people.
predictable
It's
as to how what his
it's
take is
just
going to
dumb.
be on
But
things.
anyways, well, I
Yes.
absolutely loved some of the changes, and I love what they did with episode 3. And while Bill is not the same Bill that we get in the video game, I do like the ways that they turned him, and we get the extra. Now I'm blanking on Bill's partner,
Frank.
Frank, thank you. Well, we get to see Frank, and Frank technically is not a new character, but is seen as a new character because he's actually on screen and not hanging from a rope.
Hmm.
While I loved those changes, again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt so far because I obviously we will find out more in episode 5. But the new character that is the leader of this faction, I'm not sold on it yet, and I don't know if they're going to be able to sell me on it because it so far it just seems like just because of the actress, and I have to look back up her name, has been
Hmm.
in so many other roles that you don't take serious. Now she's trying to take on the role of somebody trying to
But
be
I think
serious,
that's
and
the
I
point
can't
of
take
the
her serious.
casting, right? She looks like your cute little self, midwestern, kind of housewife, and she's this tough military leader. I think that's very much on purpose, right? That it's like a normal. The idea being that it's a normal person who, through circumstance, had to kind of rise to the challenge of this position and is now at the top of this force, even though in normally you would not think of that kind of person being in that position. So I
Yeah,
feel that that's very deliberate,
it's
deliberate choice.
maybe at the beginning of this next episode. I mean, we didn't really get a flashback this episode either. But maybe we get a flashback to show more of how she became into power. I get that she had to live through Fedra and the way Fedra was acting, and she kind of created this uprising, and she gets the military guy behind her, which really becomes her muscle at that point. And then
Hmm.
people are going to more fear him than her, and just she is one of those people that she's going to say the things that you want to hear, and then you start following it. But there have been characters like this in other zombie movies where you go, well, how in the world did they get in charge? Like the
Hmm.
governor in The Walking Dead. It's
Mm.
like, why would you follow him at the end other than he's able to talk well and he's a good politician, I guess. So maybe she has politician backgrounds and she just knows what to say. But it's just another one of those where, I mean, it's a great actor, but how in the world do you get them to follow you so well right now? Because I'm just not buying it yet.
Yeah, no, they all seem to have. There's a lot of history there that gets discussed. That there's these two people that they're after who did something to betray them, and she's on some sort of revenge quest. That they're, at least her, like, second and third in command are on board with.
Hmm.
They're also on board with her basically covering up the fact that there are literal emergence holes, like in Gears of War, emergence holes of zombies just potentially pounding to burst out of the ground at any moment.
Hmm.
So they're on a very limited time scale, but she still is going to prioritize her quest for vengeance, whatever that's about. We don't really get what those people did to her. So
Yeah, it was something with their brother, right? I think they hit on something where
killed
her
her
brother
brother or
dies
something.
because of Fedra, and
Sure.
it's been a few days now.
Well, she's got that doctor. She's got like a doctor that she's got captured, and she's interrogating him, and he won't tell her anything.
Really
And
did
then,
like that scene where she's torturing this doctor, and other people in her group gets nearly killed or are about to die from their attack from Joel, and she walks back out. Well, can the doctor help? No. All right, so she just walks in
goes and
there and
executes
kills
the
her.
doctor.
Like, the doctor could have helped in a different situation, lady, just not in this situation. But kind
Yeah,
of just
well.
shows her over the topness, I guess. Again, while I'm not fully sold on her character just yet, obviously we're going to see a lot more of that. I'm still very curious how her character is intertwined with the brothers, which we see right at
Hmm.
the end of the episode. Because
Yes.
again, in the game, they're just running away from crazy people. Now
Hmm.
they're intertwined in a way, and while they know each other and they're trying to find them, that is something they don't really delve into as to why just yet. So again, it they've opened a door to still be possible to make it make sense and make it really intriguing, but so far it hasn't hooked me yet.
Oh, sure. I mean, they're leaving. That's it's fine. They're at the process of establishing all that stuff. So, it's the first episode with all those characters. I'm sure they're setting up something. It just seems like now is the point where we're diverting more from the game in ways that maybe I'm a little bit concerned about.
And what are you concerned about?
Well, just, is this how to what degree is this going to take over the story? Is it going to take the teeth out of the next season, which is going to be more directly concerned with similar themes? You know, how satisfying? I don't know. Just because it's a more major change than what we've had so far. Like even you talk about Bill, but with Bill, it's like okay, the specifics of Bill and Frank's backstory don't really matter that much, right? In the game, it's just an environmental storytelling
Mm-hmm.
sequence largely. And while you do meet Bill, you know, you do get some of that backstory, but the specifics of the backstory kind of doesn't matter. You just need to know that there's a tragic backstory there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you change that for what is essentially a self-contained flashback episode, that doesn't affect the greater series, right? Whereas this seems like it's going to have some sort of a, you know,
But I still don't know
impact on the narrative as a whole.
if it will, because in the
Hmm.
end, at the game is you get through this group, and then you and the brothers go
Yeah,
off,
you
and
just leave
then
them behind, basically.
yeah, and then something happens with the brothers that I don't want to spoil if you've never played the
Hmm.
games, and so on and so forth. So I don't think this is going to change the fate of anybody, and I don't think that, or I think that the ends of this section of story that we get in the game will end in the same way.
Sure, it'll
I
just
just
take
think,
focus away from some other thing. I don't know.
yeah, I just think that they are trying to give purpose to this group that is in this city. Again, this was in
Hmm.
Pittsburgh in the game, or Kansas City here. That doesn't bother me at all. Um, but I do like that they're going. There's a reason why these guys are acting the way that they are,
Hmm.
not just, well, they just became crazy assholes when the apocalypse hit, and now they're going this way. They were wronged by Fedra, and like I said, I'm pretty sure her brother dies by their hands, and
Hmm.
she is like taken over from there. And then what happens when you try to overtake a big group, you become just as big of an asshole, if not worse, than the group you took over. It's a trope in all of media ever. So now she's the evil leader of this new group that took over the old group, and we'll go from there. But at least they're giving the group personality, instead of like in the game where it's just here's a bunch of random enemies to go through.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, knowing that those raiders are part of that group makes me think, okay, they're not a force for good or for justice or
Mhm.
anything like that. They're just as callous and self-serving as anybody else. But again, you've got to live in the world of the realization that everybody is like that, and if some of your guys get killed because they tried to, ambush somebody and got killed in self-defense, then that's not something to be really mad about, unless you're, an irrational a very irrational leader.
My question now with all of it, because obviously we're gonna have to flesh out her story some more, and that's fine. I'm
Hmm.
hoping we do, so I can buy into it more. Um, and we have the whole brothers arc, unless that gets pushed back and concludes in episode 6. But then you only have 3 episodes left, and you still have Dave's group. You still have what happens with Joel. Again, trying to not be spoilerific. We have another flashback section that's going to be a side thing, and the ending, and everything else in between. And you're only going to have
Hmm.
3 episodes to go with it. So I think we have to get through everything going on with this lady that's leading this group, and
Next
everything to
episode.
go on with the brothers on this episode that comes out tonight, to be
Hmm.
able to not jam pack everything else in. And that's going to feel like this next episode is going to be crazy jam packed, and I'm
Hmm.
curious how they're going to do it. Obviously we're going to get the bloater in this one, and that is what they were kind of hinting at with the weird ground stuff that was going on. I only
Mm.
assume that because in the original trailer the bloater comes out of the ground to first be revealed. So I think
Hmm.
that'll take place in this next episode. So there is
Makes
a
sense.
ton that could happen in this next episode where I don't feel like a ton happened in this episode. We got
No.
introduced to a couple characters. We got a lot of great Joel and Ellie moments. But when you're only thinking there's only 9 episode season, it feels like this upcoming episode is going to be so much more jam packed with craziness than we had
Hmm.
in this episode, for
I mean,
sure.
this one was a lot of sneaking around that city,
Hmm.
which, you know, all I will give it credit for. Again, they did a really good job of making it feel like the game, making it feel like the exploration segments from the game. So all that stuff was very much on point. But yeah, in terms of progressing the plot,
Hmm.
it's not really a big one.
I do like right at the end of the episode before we start wrapping this thing up.
Hmm.
I do like that they make mention of the hearing with Joel, though I don't remember in the game if his hearing was stronger from one side or the other. But hearing, obviously, when you play those games, especially the first one, was so crucial because you have a hearing button, so you can kind of sense where enemies are. That was the
Right.
gimmick of the game. So I
Good
do
Batman
like that they
detective
brought up
vision.
that
Yeah.
well, our hearing's not that good on one side, and then of course he falls asleep where his bad ear is up, and he doesn't
Hmm.
hear the brothers come in. I do like those are just those subtle nods that you get thrown into a good adaptation that 100% makes sense.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
All right, do you
Alrighty.
have a score?
I it was good. It was a good episode. It was not like it was in any way bad, but it did not reach to me the heights of oh my god, amazing that I had with the first three.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, this is like a solid 8.
This is the first time we have the exact same score.
Wow. Okay.
Because I also put down an 8. I'm right there with you. Did I have any issues with this episode? Not really. Was it a good episode? Absolutely. We get introduced to some people that will build, hopefully, into the next episode. Though, again, it's just one of those weird things where in most shows, hey, we got introduced to a character. We're going to build that character for multiple episodes. None of these characters are probably going to last
Hmm.
one more episode, and if they do make it past one, it'll be two, and then they will be gone. So it's just
Let's
it's
hope because I don't want them to. I'm tired of them already. So let's get them out of here.
right. So it'll be interesting where it's like, well, let's see them build, but you got like 20 minutes to build and then crush
Hmm.
said episodes. In The Walking Dead, they would be there for 3 seasons, and
Hmm.
so that is a little different. However, while I had no huge qualms about the episode, when we get done with this whole season and we
Hmm.
look back at all of the 9 episodes, other than the beautiful scene in the car where they redo the conversation about the porn magazine and it's just yanked straight from the game and it had a big smile on my face, there's not another part of this episode that will go, I remember that vividly.
Hmm.
And then
Sure.
so far in the other 3 episodes, there's just been 3 or 4 things that we'll be able to just nail of what we really liked from each episode. So this was a good episode that builds towards other things going on in the season and really builds the Joel and Ellie stuff, but it doesn't really have that same impact that we had in the first 3 and what I really feel will be the same case the next 5.
Cool. Yep. Completely agree. All right. Well, I'll be off to play some J.K. Rowling simulator.
I mean,
And
well, we'll talk about it after. We don't need to add the episode, but yeah,
mm,
it is going to be interesting to see. Again, the episode will come out later today from when we're recording. We'll be back next week to react to that. If it goes as far as I think it's going to go, we're going to have a ton to talk about next week. So it's a shorter episode this week, but it was a shorter episode of the show as well. So totally works for us. But we'll be back next week. That's Jens. I'm Randy. We will see you next time. But until then, just enjoy the show.